So as you are shouting that, oh, Sudan is maltreating its own people, it doesn't concern China. What concerns China is what I can get for my people. If you want, kill yourself. And you can see the road initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative, moving from different parts of Europe into Africa. That's the kind of grand strategy, because they have looked at it and said, well, how can we leverage on what we have to actually make enough resources available to our people? In the 70s, 80s, Chinese will go out and settle down in other countries. If you go to China now, the younger people are not as enamored of traveling outside the country and staying outside the country as in the past. Chinese children will go out and come back. Nigerians will go out, and you are on a visiting visa for 1 week. You are looking for how to stay in that country forever. You know, how do we create a Nigeria in which once you spend 1 week outside your country, you are anxious to go back home? It is by creating that grand strategy, understanding how to leverage on our geography, on our resources, on our people, you know, to make sure that we develop this forward-looking approach that will make life comfortable for the people, that will make the country stronger. It has to come as a plan. You know, in Nigeria, once you do a brand new road, that is when Water Corporation will remember that, oh, they have to cut the road to lay a pipe somewhere. No, all these things must have been within a plan. Our soldiers cannot be at the war front and they will start worrying about the school fees of their children back home. No, there has to be a grand strategy to take care of all those things. We cannot all be sleeping and policemen are out there in the middle of the night patrolling, and once they are killed, the following week you tell them to move out, their family to move out of the barracks. No, the grand strategy will have to take care of that. And of course, look at Cuba. Cuba is training medical doctors, but the medical doctors are also doing wonderful jobs all over the world. And once they finish their job, they go back home. But what is happening to our own medical doctors? We train them, they leave. It's because there is no grand strategy, there is no sense of purpose, no sense of direction, no sense of mission. So let's create a grand strategy that in which you put everything within the crucible, you understand the direction in which we are headed. Then, of course, we would have satisfied that preconditions for a takeoff.
Thank you so much for that. And this right now, because of course I'm going to be asking you about the potential that we have. And in this case, of course, I'm not looking at only the Nigerian government. I'm looking at the Nigerian people, the resources, the geography, the composition of who we are. Because, for example, somebody might think, what is there to defend in Nigeria? That is everything to defend in Nigeria. So the Nigerian people have everything to defend. The population of Nigeria is a resources.
Yes.
Our land, our geography is a resources. Our position in the world is a resources. So we have everything to defend. Even our history is a resources. So we cannot leave it to those 4 people in Aso Rock that Nigeria belongs to them. No, Nigeria belongs to all of us. That means building Nigeria requires the effort of all of us. So we must ask ourselves, what can I do to make Nigeria a better place? Because if we expect just Buhari to fix Nigeria, even if Buhari were to live for 1,000 years, he cannot do it.
Yes.
But if we require all Nigeria to participate in it, then it will take much faster and easier for us. For example, you see, talking of what Nigeria could be in the world, Nigeria are used to the saying that we are the giant of Africa.
Yes.
What if we were to build on that say, because really we can be the giant of Africa. We have the resources to be able to do that. We have the people to be able to do that. Because it take number to be able to play in the world that we are living today. If you are just 4 or 5 people, you cannot do it. So I want you to speak to the potential that we have in Nigeria in terms of what that can do in our development.
Yeah, Nigeria is one huge untapped potential. And it was not like that before. It wasn't like that because as we were growing up, especially my generation, as we were growing up, we had this sense of inclusion. We all went to Awolowo schools in those days. That's what they used to call them in the late 60s, early 70s. When you schooled in Ekiti or you schooled in Ikpetumodu, which is my hometown, you don't feel alienated. You don't feel excluded from the scheme of things. We had this sense of inclusion. And so we had shared experiences, you know, and we didn't feel inferior, whether you schooled in Ile-Ife or you schooled in anywhere in the West. You didn't feel inferior to anybody because that was the way we were all trained. We used the same books, we sang the same songs, we had the same sense of identity, we had this sense of the same inclusiveness, and our parents also felt the same way. Where the problem with Nigeria started was apparently after the infusion of petrodollar into the economy, and everybody started moving out of the countryside into the cities to create a new existence and a new consumption pattern. It is consumption that began to cause these problems. With Doji Award of 1974, with petrol money in the economy, people began to look for white collar jobs, and that began to create that sense of distinction in society. And with that sense of distinction, you also began to feel more alienation based on religion, based on ethnicity. In those days, when people played on the field of soccer, we didn't want to know where you came from. But now, if you select people for Green Eagles, they want to see, okay, how many Igbo, how many Yoruba, how many Hausa. Well, for us in those days, we didn't care. In fact, we were even adopting names of people we didn't know. You know, once they played very well, you become that in your own school. You know, whether it was Igbo or also anything. Haruna Ilerika, we didn't know where he came from. You know, I mean, so these were the things. Today now, there is so much acute sense of alienation. Why do you want to die for Nigeria? Oh, when people from your ethnic group are being alienated, or all offices in the federation are being monopolized by some people. And so people no longer feel that sense of inclusiveness. It's now the politics of exclusion. That's what is killing Nigeria. So a time must come when inclusiveness becomes part of the grand strategy. Without that inclusiveness, all the potentials we have will come to naught. All. Because why do I want to die for Nigeria? Why do I want to establish businesses? I mean, in the economic history I teach my students about the tax holidays that Awolowo introduced in the Western region. Eventually, the federal government of Nigeria in those days also introduced it. Awolowo wanted to industrialize Western region at a fast pace. So he encouraged foreign capital to come in, even local capital also. And he gave them tax holidays to say, well, if you bring this, your industry, we won't be taxing you until after 5 years. We want you to stabilize, we want you to grow, we want you to give our children jobs. By the time you give them tax holidays for 5 years, they are also happy to come, and they are also happy to make their profits and invest that profit. You know, I remember I went to my state, I wanted to start a school, and then the first thing I did was to start building a fence around the piece of land. And the very morning I started the fence, it came from the local government that I must come and pay for the fence. I must pay tax on the fence. I said, I have not made any profit here yet. Now you are driving me away with the tax. So by the time I did 2 coaches for the fence, I just left to say, why do I need all this profit? So if I'm starting a school, why don't you give me a tax holiday for 5 years? I'm developing my hometown. I'm going to develop jobs for people. And so it's that lack of understanding of how society should move